And it already says that it's recording.
Perfect. Well, hello, all you cool cats and kittens. This is Medical Monday.
Oh, cool cats and kittens.
If it's okay by Carol, I don't know if it's copyrighted, but anyways, it's Medical Monday, and we're going to be going over your immune system today. You know, last week, Dr. Gabby and I talked a lot about what a virus is and what it does to you. And then today we're going to talk about how your body responds to it. Okay?
Yes. Fancy way of saying that, Lonnie, is immunity. We're going to talk about immunity this week, the different parts of our immune system, how those different parts work, and then also we're going to plant the seed for what we're going to do next week.
Okay, well, so to start it out, then our immune system, there's 7 parts plus a few extra that really aren't part of your immune system, but help your immunity, and they're very vital. So we'll say it's like 7.2 parts.
7.2. Is that your statistics? Is that what is it? Are you one of the government workers that are helping with the numbers?
No, not at all. So,
well, and before to interrupt you again, sorry. So we do have a special guest today, so don't forget he'll be popping in here whenever they are available. So when they pop in, we'll veer course there, and then we'll get right back on track.
Right back on it.
Yes.
Let's start this list down.
Yes.
7 parts.
7.2.
7.2. The first thing is your white blood cells. Those are your lymphocytes.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes you call them your B cells. And what they do with your immune system is they start it all out. Phagocytosis. Whenever there's a virus or a bacteria within your body, they engulf it.
They Pac-Man it.
They Pac-Man
Or Miss Pac-Man it.
Or Miss Pac-Man.
Walk, 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 walk.
I was talking earlier about Miss Pac-Man, and I think she had a pearl necklace or earrings.
We don't know. I don't recall.
So Dr. Gabby's like our Pac-Man today. But they do phagocytosis. They Pac-Man the virus or bacteria because they need to make antigens.
Yes.
So then they release all these antigens, and your body starts your immune process.
Yes, instant. And so, yes, they take it in, they process it, they break it down, and then they figure out markers like we talked about last week to see how they can create that antigen and then create it into an antibody. And that's number 2, antibodies.
Number 2, yes.
There's a very fancy word called immunoglobulins. We do have a competition. Can you say that 8 times fast? How many times fast?
I have a hard time saying it 1 time
fast. Yes, exactly. Immunoglobulins. We call those IGs. So if you hear the IG, that's immunoglobulin. And so it starts. We're going to do these in alphabetical order, not necessarily the order that they.
Let's run them down.
Yes, IgA. These are your mucous membranes. They're found in your saliva, in your tears. Breast milk is another good example because, you know, I'm sure if anybody's ever breastfed their children or had their children get gunky eyes when they're that little, my mom told me, just put some breast milk on it. So IgA, those are going to be your mucus type ones. And they're all over the body as well. Yep.
And then there's IgD. Not a lot is known about IgD. It's kind of a mystery as far as what it does. We do know that it fights bacteria, and it calls in some helper cells called basophils.
Yep.
And then we got IgF. IgF is more common that most people are related to because it's allergies. It's actually an immune response. It's a hypersensitivity. So when you have pollen and you get a runny nose or your eyes itch, that's an overreactive response to that, and that's your IgF.
Yes, IgF. I like to talk about histamine. It's kind of like a histamine reaction. You get that when you sneeze, like you were talking about, things like that. So IgF is more of like a almost instantaneous type response to avoid things. And thank you for letting me have IgG, because I am the original G.
Gabby.
Yeah, Dr. Gabby. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, IgGs are the memory antibodies.
Yep.
These are the ones that exist because you had chickenpox, so you're likely not going to get chickenpox again. These are the ones.
Chickenpox. So chickenpox didn't go away.
No.
But did you have chickenpox as a kid?
I did have. I got a scar in the middle of my forehead.
Okay. So the IgG is what's preventing you from having chickenpox again.
Correct.
So it's your long-term memory system. So once you get in contact with a virus or bacteria, these are the ones that stick around to provide a lifetime or many years of immunity to where if you ever come back in contact with it, like we do all the time for chickenpox, but we just don't get it because we have IgG. So thanks, IgG.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
Oh,
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. IgG, and the next one, IgM, those are the ones that we're actually testing for on the COVID-19 antibodies test.
Yeah, that's your initial first responders.
Yes, IgMs are the police officers, the firefighters, the
first ones on the scene.
They get there.
So when the white blood cells, and they make those first batch of antigens, that when they Pac-Man the virus or bacteria, and they release that first batch of antigens, that's what we're referring to. Those first initial, and they're not as memory responsive like the IgG. What it is, they're just kind of like a blanket antigen that's going to go out and kill something very fast and quick. And then your body will come around to the process of making that long-term immunity.
Yes, that's why we call them first responders. They just get on the scene, get it taken care of, and then IgG starts its process as well.
Much better for long-term process.
So we have A's, we have G's, A's, B's, F's, G's, and M's.
Yep.
There's many more, but those are the 5 major ones when we talk about immunoglobulins.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next on the list within our immune system is our complement system.
You look so great today.
No, you could be part of the complement system.
I could, but I'm not.
But a complement system is very, very complex. Okay.
It is.
I remember many weeks in school going over just the complement system alone. It's a lot of proteins, binders, what else? The inhibitors, multiple different steps. It's going to walk your body through the process. When we talk about your immune system, it goes through a cascade of events. And each one of those events has got to have different chemicals, different molecules to transport from one phase to the next phase.
Yes.
So it's a very complement system, but a very complicated system at that.
It is very complicated.
But the easy system is the next one. Your lymphatic system.
The lymphatic system, yes. Many people have heard about the lymphatic system. Who's ever had a runny nose or a morning where your allergies are so bad, your neck's a little stiff and you can feel those lymph nodes in the front of your neck? I know a lot of times I'll feel it in patients on the back of the neck as well. So your lymphatic system, it actually is a drainage type flowing system that runs with your veins, your arteries, and your nerves. So the body's a very efficient portal or vessel, and so just like our streets, although in some cities they don't run very well, but it's okay. The lymphatics is actually something that helps to filter through that and execute actually an immune response.
Yep, it's just a drainage system where all your blood cells and all of the bad breakdown of the virus or bacteria is got to get processed somewhere, and that's where it's going to get processed out of your body from the lymphatic system. Yes. So very good. Thank you, lymphatic system.
Thanks.
What about the spleen? Spleen's next.
Oh, the spleen. So the spleen is actually where.
Spleen.
No, that's not your spleen.
Oh.
No,
okay.
You're sorry.
I thought it.
Your spleen is what. These are very serious matters, Lonnie.
They are.
Sorry. Your spleen, that's what actually stores your white blood cells. So we're going to talk about where they're made in a moment, but the spleen actually stores the white blood cells and your platelets. And then it also not so much recycles, but processes the ones that are being retired.
Yep.
So the blood system, circulatory system actually filters through the spleen and other organs, and the spleen is where they're recycled, stored, and then executed and released when they need to go back into the filtration.
Very helpful spleen.
Yes.
But we got to get the blood cells from somewhere.
Yes.
And we get them from the next system of the bone marrow.
Bone marrow.
So bone marrow is just a spongy material inside of our bones, and that's actually where our blood cells come from. That's the very first release part, and they work in conjunction with the kidney as far as when do you need more cells. There's a fancy term, is erythropoietin is released, and that's what tells you that you need to make more cells.
I would rather say immunoglobulins.
See, that one's out of my range.
Yeah. Hey, so is spongy bone what allows me to do the wave so well? Like,
no. Close, but not quite. It's spongy material inside the bone. Not a spongy bone, but inside the bone.
Inside the bone.
Inside the bone. That's where it's going to release and start giving us all this immunity immunity cells that are going to help fight off whatever bacteria or virus that we got. And
so there's another one, right? Bone marrow. We just talked about bone marrow, spongy bone. So tell me about number 7, the thymus.
The thymus.
Do I have one of those?
Yes, you do.
What is this?
Everybody has one. It actually produces lymphocytes. So it's another producer of cells that help your body through this cascade of events that we call immune response.
The immune response.
Yeah.
And the lymphocytes, the T lymphocytes.
T lymphocytes.
Those are ones that are like a blank slate.
Yep.
Like, here's a blank canvas. What do you need me to be? That's what a T lymphocyte is, right?
So you go down that path. And then they'll break up into whatever they need from there.
And that happens through the complement system.
Through the very complicated complement system.
The CC
of it.
Okay.
C squared system. But those are the 7. Now we talked about the 7 actual parts to the immune system. But there's another part to it. This is not actually in the immune system, but it helps the immune system. Go over a couple of those. Which one?
So the
first one's the skin.
Yes. I was going to say, not to to point anything out, but our skin actually helps to protect us from multiple things. So our skin is our largest organ. I don't know if you knew that.
Largest organ. I've heard that before.
Yes. Our skin is our largest organ.
It's a good barrier.
And yes, it is. It helps us thermoregulate. It helps us to actually create some of this immune system parts that we've been talking about. And so, yeah, it's a barrier. It's got its own mucus. It has oils. It responds in different ways. I know we've had discussions in the past, and that's why burn victims, a lot of times, it's very, very important for burn victims to be taken care of, depending on how severe it is and how much it covers. Because if your skin is not,
if you don't have a barrier, then just anybody can get in. That's like having no front door on your house.
Yeah.
It's not a good way to do it.
Anything can get in, and there's no protection there. Because we're covered. It doesn't matter if you bathe 6 times a day or once a week. Your body is covered in bacteria and virus and
the most abundant thing.
Yep, opportunistic organisms, we can call them.
So the next one, though, is your lungs. Those lungs are not part of the immune system, but they help your body by getting rid of any type of bacteria or virus within your lungs by creating mucus. Once this mucus is created, what happens, you have these cells within your lungs called cilia that actually work to get that out. Because you don't want to leave it in your lungs. If it stays in there, it's a warm, dark environment, and if it's moist, that's a perfect breeding ground for any bacteria or virus.
Very true.
So thankfully, our lungs have the ability to help get fluid out.
Yes, they do. And that's also how many viruses and things are actually spread, is through the lungs. When we expel, that's because our body's actually expelling it, so those water molecules are out.
And that's what we talked about last week. We went over what is a virus. Part of it is it's non-living, so how does it get around? It's got to have what's called a vector, a mode of being transported somewhere. So like we talked about in the lungs and your mucus, if you were to cough, those droplets will be out in the air and somebody else could breathe them in, and then they could be ill. Yep.
And that's actually, we talked about this last week as well, why a lot of people are encouraged to wear masks, is because it actually prevents your things to...
Come on in. I think this is our guest. Our special guest. He's here.
All right.
You may recognize him.
Here, I'll sit in the middle.
Hello. All right. Medical Monday. Dr. Hewlett here. I'll squeeze my head that way. How about this, Dr. What if we swap chairs?
Yeah.
Put him in the middle.
Swap. And I'll be here just for a moment today.
Which is not fair, because with the coronavirus going right now, I feel like I've got corona hair. It's a little bit long. I can't get it cut. And now he comes in with a fresh do. So not fair, but here he goes.
Lots of hair product. Now, I'm excited to be here today because I know they've been talking to you about immunity, about antibodies, and I wanted to share with you something that just came out over the weekend. This is the New York Times, and there have been several similar articles in multiple news outlets. This one is titled, "Will an antibody test allow us to go back to school or work?" And it goes on to say, people who are believed to be immune may be able to safely return to work. It could be especially important to know which healthcare workers are protected from getting infected and could continue to care for sick people, or anybody who's an essential worker in any industry, whether it's the grocery store, the mechanic, and hundreds of other businesses that have remained open. It's important to know who has developed antibodies already. Not only for those people, but for people that are at home right now saying, look, I just want to know, can I venture out safely in the community? Have I developed immunity already? This test is absolutely important to helping our country get back to normal as soon as possible. And so the test that we are using, we were fortunate to partner with a company that they worked in conjunction with the Mayo Clinic over the past several weeks in developing an FDA-validated test that looks for 4 specific antigens. Have you guys already talked about that?
We've talked about all the antigens.
Okay, so test for 4 specific antigens are like birthmarks, right? 4 specific antigens, and it's going to look at those immunoglobulins they talked about, the IgM, IgG, IgA. And so we're very, very excited. We started doing the test today. We had multiple people come by the office, get tested this morning, And so for those of you watching this, if you want to get tested for antibodies to know if you have been exposed, and over 50% of the people that are exposed never develop symptoms. So you may have been exposed and don't even know it, but that way you'll find out, do you have antibodies and can you safely venture out in the community? Please give us a call, come by the office. All the information will be somewhere attached in this link. We're here to help our community get back to normal.
Good. I know you talked about the small amount of symptoms that people are going to have. We went over that last week and we talked about, 50% not even going to know they have it, but then you still got 31% that just have mild symptoms. A little cough or just sneezing. You could think it's allergies, which that's how mild of symptoms that you could have with it. So the antibody test is great. I'm glad we have it. I'm glad we're offering it so that you guys can figure out, did you have it already? And now you have immunity to it.
Yeah.
So,
and then you get back out, and back to one of the patients this morning, I was talking to her husband about a month ago had a mild case of walking pneumonia. And he was like, was that the virus? He's one of these tough guys. He's like, he just, waited at home for 2 or 3 days, and he probably shouldn't have gone back to work, but he was like, hey, I'm a tough guy. He's in construction, so he got back to work. But he's curious, hey, was that the actual COVID-19 I was exposed to?
Good question.
So, he's going to be coming up here and wants to get tested as well.
Well, good.
Awesome.
All right. We want to say thank you, Dr. Euler, for stopping by.
Yes.
And then we're going to wrap up the rest of the week here.
All right. I'm going to let Dr. Gabby back in. Great seeing you guys.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Hewlett.
Okay, so back to recap. We went over the 7 parts of the immune system, and we're on the extra parts that help us.
Yes,
and this is a good segue. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I wanted to hit on one point before we change subjects again. Dr. Hewlett mentioned birth markers or birthmarks. Those are usually unique to you as an individual, and that's how the immunoglobulins actually create themselves for each individual virus, which is why, you don't have, everybody has different immunoglobulins for different things that they've been exposed to. We're actually testing specifically for COVID-19 immunoglobulins. So these are not to see if you've had these other things. These are specific to COVID-19 virus markers. So those birthmarks that he was talking about. Sorry, I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that.
So every virus has a specific antigen, whether it's a chickenpox, other viruses that you have, the COVID, the common cold, the flu, all of those are going to have very specific markers, birthmarks, like she said, and Dr. Euler was talking about. Thankfully, we're doing that, and he's going to put the link in. I know there's a couple other times that are kind of blocked out because we're doing it in the front of the office, not in the office. So you can pull up. There's some tables, some chairs, some staff out there to help fill out all your paperwork, to where only thing you're doing is sticking your arm out, getting a little bit of blood drawn, and then they're going to take care of the rest.
And you don't have to be a patient. Just pulling up. That's why we have the paperwork for you to fill out, and we'll get you taken care of. 7 minutes. It doesn't take very long at all.
Not too long. And it's a beautiful day. The sun's out.
Beautiful.
It's a little bit of a
beautiful.
breeze. And a little bit of chill in the air, and as the day goes on, it'll warm up. But this is the additional parts of your immune system, and this is actually going to segue into next week's topic. Next week's topic, Dr. Gabby's favorite topic, is trust your gut.
Trust your gut.
So,
or the gut.
Or the gut.
Yeah.
What about the gut that's going to help your immune system, though?
There are so many parts of the gut that helps our immune system. We talked about mucus. We're salivating.
That's where it all starts.
We have when our nose runs. There's a lot involved when we talk about the digestive tract, the immune system in itself. So we have something inside of us called a microbiome. All right, it's our own living world. And so, so we're going to talk about digestion next week. And the way that our gut is our immune system is that we consume things constantly. And what our body's able to do is actually take it in, defeat it before we even know we have it, and then excrete it in some way. If anybody's ever had food poisoning, there's so many different types of food poisoning that we can get. But typically there's 3 responses you get. Either you throw it up almost immediately, you end up with diarrhea and lose a few pounds over a few days, or within a few hours you get both front and bottom.
Your body's saying, hey, it's got to get out of here.
And that's honestly your body's response to saying this is not good, this is foreign. That all comes from your digestive tract. And so we have different parts that have different jobs to take care of that and actually help us fight things before we even know that we've been exposed to them, or even know if we've ever been exposed to them.
And we talked about it last week. There's so many viruses out there, and it's on everything, whether it's plants, the meat, everything that we have, there's viruses. So the good thing is your body initially won't even let those pass through to where you have to worry about your immune system. Thankfully, we have our gut. We have tons of antibodies and acid within there that's going to take care of us.
Yes, and one of the other things that we hit on last week was high inflammatory versus low inflammatory. And the fancy word I like to use is chronicity. If we have anything that we've had chronically, that means there's a lot of inflammation in our bodies because of what our body is naturally fighting. When we talk about that, it can be diabetes, obesity, lack of activity, because if we're lazy and don't do things, then obviously, oh, it hurts when I move. Like, yeah, because you haven't moved. Our muscles are pumped. We need to keep the things flowing. Golly, what else is there? Lupus. There's so many or inflammatory responses that our body has, chronic diseases that exist in the world today. And specifically the gut is a great way to help really maintain that in a beautiful sense. So
and relieve some of that stressor.
Yeah,
that the inflammation that she's talking about starts with the complement system. So that's when we talk about your immunity as a whole can be compromised if you have other health conditions, which is why it's so important for us to take care of ourselves and eat right, exercise, but also sleep. Sleep is important too. So make sure you throw all three of those in. We're going to wrap up today's episode. We've got the 7 big parts of your immune system, and then a couple extra ones that help out. Thank you, lungs and digestive system. But next week, we're going to talk about
trust your gut. We're going to talk about burning down the house, clearing it out, and then rebuilding it.
Rebuilding it. All righty. Until then, I'll see y'all next week.
Yes. Bye, cats and kittens.